Okay, so at the time of this recording, we are a couple of hours removed from Novak Djokovic capturing his 6th Rome title, this time without dropping a set. I think to nobody's surprise, Novak Djokovic has rounded into form. I would be lying if during Monte Carlo and especially after the Belgrade final and how much he had to struggle throughout that run, I wasn't worried for a split second, but then I thought back to how bad he looked in Monte Carlo against Dan Evans last year and remembered how clay court season ended last year, and then I was like, yeah, you should probably give it until Rome. And well, Novak, you kind of knew by Madrid, especially that semifinal, that titanic fight with Alcaraz, you knew at that point that, yeah, Novak Djokovic is going to be ready, and he only got better this week in Rome. Obviously, I have a lot of catching up to do with what I missed between Barcelona and Rome, pretty much. Another week in Geneva, Leo, and all those events, but more or less rest up for RG is the program, and so I'm going to try and fill in the blanks. Starting off, obviously my top contenders heading into the French are very similar to what is pretty much everybody's, I think, almost unanimously at this point. I get there'd be some debate over who is 1 and 2, but at this moment, I guess you have to give the benefit of the doubt to Djokovic on experience, and you just know what you're going to get out of Novak. And so, to no one's surprise, as I said earlier, he has rounded into form, and at this point, yeah, you'd have to consider him the number 1 favorite, at least in my eyes, heading into Paris. Going to be very difficult to beat. It's kind of the same type of feeling I got heading into last year after Rome. Rome really is the marker for Djokovic during clay at this point. By the numbers, you could argue this is his best Masters along with Miami. It is noteworthy, I would say, that he separates himself by 2 now in the all-time Masters lead with the 38th here. I really was impressed by the quarter, in particular against Felix Auger-Aliassime, given how, at least up until Madrid, Felix had been through a very, very difficult clay court season and had really been reeling ever since March-ish. However, he had a good win in Madrid, demolishing Jannik Sinner, I believe, and then really impressed me against Novak. Best I've ever seen Felix on clay by far, and it's just another glimpse into the tremendous upside that he possesses. That for a lot of this match there was very little separating the two, and Novak this match in particular really impressed with probably his best match of 2022 in my opinion. I will say, to the naked eye, what sticks out to me is Novak's serving this clay court season seems to be even beyond what it was last year, and last year a lot was made about how well Djokovic was serving throughout Australia. I wouldn't say it translated all that much to clay. It wasn't as big a factor in my opinion, but by the looks of it this year, I don't have the numbers, but watching the matches, it's just seemed like so many times his spot serving has been so key and just zoned in. A lot of the Alcaraz match, that was what was standing out for him in Madrid. And with Djokovic yet again, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish, and Djokovic has finished this Euro clay court season on a tear, primed to chase a 3rd French Open title again. moving on to the guy that I have slotted as the second favorite for Roland Garros, Carlos Alcaraz has continued his impressive form early in the season into clay court season. Obviously began it with a bit of a dud in Monte Carlo. Didn't seem to handle the conditions the best, and just threw in one of those clunkers. Natural after having played so well for so long to begin in this year, but he has rebounded beautifully since Barcelona. I'm pretty sure he had to pull double duty multiple times in Barcelona, and got a win over Tsitsipas on clay. Very big as far as the dynamics of that rivalry go. It's always seemed like Alcaraz has had his number to some extent matchup wise, but it was probably really vital for Tsitsipas to still defend his turf per se on clay, and Alcaraz very well could have won that match in straight sets. He was zoning for a lot of it, a bit of a lull in the second to get Tsitsipas back in it, but Carlos, with that result, it would be hard not to back him if those two were to meet at Roland Garros. And then he followed it up with, without exaggeration, one of the greatest Masters 1000 runs we've ever seen. I do plan on making a solo video just on that run and how impressed I was with it. Basically the rundown went through a couple of grueling matches with Cam Norrie, Rafa Nadal, Novak Djokovic, and then demolished Alexander Zverev in the end. I think what's impressed me the most with Carlos has been just how well his 1-2 has worked throughout clay. There were concerns about how he would handle, the serve being his one area to work on. As far as that's concerned, the kick serve has stood out to me, and it has been instrumental in his 1-2 being so effective against even Nadal and Djokovic. Madrid, it's hard to extrapolate much, but throughout this clay court season, I guess heading into the French, the only concern with Alcaraz would be how limited what we've seen has been in best of 5. Obviously ran into a physical wall after back-to-back 5-setters at the US Open. That was understandable, impressive enough that he was able to pull through those back-to-back 5-setters. But he's clearly a different man this year. He's improved his conditioning, obviously, and gotten better at basically every aspect of his game. And, being able to pull double duty, did it in Rio, did it in Barcelona multiple times, and then being able to come through, I think it was around the ballpark of 3 hours against Norrie, Rafael Nadal, obviously, undercooked, but always challenging on this surface regardless. And then Novak Djokovic in almost 4 hours before turning around to demolish Sasha Zverev at his favorite tournament. Stamina has been remarkable, and it's something I don't think I worry about with Alcaraz as we head into best of 5 on clay at Roland Garros. And it would be the hipster trendy pick to see Alcaraz break through at the French, and it's something that honestly I wouldn't rule out of the picture at this point, because we started the season with Alcaraz and I was like, I think he'll be top 10 at the end of the year. I think he'd be top 8 at the end of the year. Then he won Rio, and I was like, okay, I'll probably be top 10 by post US Open September. And then after he won Miami, it was like, oh wow, he actually could win a slam this year. And now after Madrid, and again, you can't extrapolate much from Madrid, but it was just remarkable stuff to, just see what Carlos is made of at this early an age. And it's nothing we didn't know. We know he's supremely mentally tough, but nonetheless, it doesn't make the feat any less remarkable. And, I've gotten to the point where I truly would not be surprised if I saw Carlos Alcaraz hoist the trophy at Roland Garros in a couple of weeks. It's gotten to that point where I'm like, wow, he actually could win the next major. So, that is what it is. Moving on, I think there's a pretty big gap between 2 and 3, bigger than between 1 and 2, and that would be Rafael Nadal. We find ourselves at a unique spot with Rafael Nadal heading into Roland Garros this year, at least as far as I'm concerned, and I think as far as pretty much everyone else is concerned, this is the most down we've been on Rafael Nadal heading into the French Open since 2015, and that's probably the only time over the past couple decades that you would feel this way about Rafa heading into the French Open. And it is for different reasons this year, definitely. My video about a month ago about Patrick Mouratoglou's comments about Rafa heading into Roland Garros this year. First of all, I do want to point out that I was strictly talking about, the potential point that Djokovic has a higher peak than Nadal on clay that he alluded to, which is objectively false, and I saw the comments. He did not specify that he was talking about now. He was talking about now as far as the clay court season, but as far as the best player in the world, even on clay, he did not specify right now. And he knew exactly what he was doing. That's just what Patrick Mouratoglou does. He just loves to stir the pot and all that. But I will give him this. He did say Rafael Nadal is likely to not show up in his best form at the French Open. And I feel like it is for different reasons than he would have thought, at least that he indicated in his comments. I don't want to give him too much credit, but I don't think any of us could have seen Rafa's foot injury flaring up in Rome. It's definitely concerning. It's bad timing that it happened now, but even before then, he was not showing particularly promising form. He was greatly undercooked, and that was very evident. That being said, I would like to make note of the fact that the first set that Rafa played against Shapovalov was easily the best that he had looked throughout the match's short stint in which he'd been back from that rib injury he sustained at Indian Wells. He looked excellent in that particular set. I didn't want to put too much stock into it because Denis Shapovalov also was playing one of his patented, just brain-dead tactical matches. But regardless, he was looking good. It did fall apart quickly even before there was much of an indication of the foot injury flaring up because, it was kind of self-inflicted that he was out there for longer than he needed to be. He played a very poor second set. But I think there are reasons for optimism as far as, the level that he showed in that first set. It's good enough that if Rafa Nadal is to show up for the French Open, he'll beat pretty much everybody he has to face week one with that kind of level. He did mention that he would be bringing his doctor along with him to Roland Garros, and I feel like if they're able to, it's been done before. He had to numb his foot during the 2008 Wimbledon final. Painkillers, all that, if they're able to numb his foot enough and it behaves, at least somewhat throughout those 2 weeks at Roland Garros, I do think that Nadal will have something to say about the crown somewhat slipping at this point. That being said, I have had this sort of feeling over the last year pretty much that Rafael Nadal's clay peak, it has been greatly diminished. Years have gone by. I think from 2017 through 2019 when he reclaimed his French Open title. He was excellent there. 2017, 2018, he dominated the clay court seasons. 2019 got off to a slow start, but he was pretty much at that just unbeatable level by the time Rome and Roland Garros rolled around in 2019. That being said, the foot injury really has been something that's been a bigger issue ever since post-pandemic. And it's not just the foot injury. I do think post-pandemic in general, Nadal has slowed down just as far as agility and physicality go. And on clay, he has become a worse clay court player for it. Roland Garros 2020 will be one of his iconic landmark performances, but that also is kind of the blueprint for Nadal being able to dominate Roland Garros again, and that's essentially just play perfectly as he did through the last two matches there, at least perfectly for old Nadal standards. The margin for error certainly is not there as it used to be, and it's resulted in him being, ripe for the picking in the clay court seasons to players that you would not expect him to be going out to, and it looking uglier than it has in the past, even when he slipped up, as you saw a little bit in 2019, but I still think, once he got it back up to his peak level, it was all the same back then in 2019. That is not the case anymore. Nadal has less room for error now on clay, and that is just a fact. I do think that it's very unfortunate that he happened to sustain that rib injury, because it really halted all his momentum in its tracks, and he said so himself in Madrid when I think someone asked him something along the lines of, can you still take confidence out of your brilliant start to the year, and does that help you now? And he basically said, no, I'm pretty much starting at square one again. And I think it would be one thing if we were dealing with rust, but if health is something that is going to be an issue to this extent at Roland Garros, then yeah, that severely knocks his chances down. But what I will say with the nature of his foot injury is, he's talked about breaks and inactivity being the worst thing for it, and what really sets it off. You saw it when it first started giving him pain, post-pandemic resumption of the tour, and, also following this past rib injury. And that kind of tells me that he's not going to get much out of not playing Roland Garros. As far as how he's spoken about it, it looks like he will play, and, I don't think I'm as down on his chances as a lot of other people were after seeing how much pain he was in Rome. Again, I do find it encouraging that he said his doctor will travel with him to Roland Garros. And, I've just learned better than to count out these GOATs, legends of the game, and I've always been of the mindset that unless I see 2015 Nadal out there, I'm going to believe. You can call it delusional. I don't see 2015 Nadal out there. It's going to be, about his foot behaving or not, of whether Nadal's going to be a true contender or not. But I have him slotted at number 3, and that is because, in spite of Stefanos Tsitsipas' stellar clay court season by the results, you could even argue, I think, that it was slightly better than last year's clay court season. However, if you've watched his matches, still, the level is not as good as it was last year. I wouldn't even say it's as good as it was the year before at the French in 2020. I spoke about it a little bit in my last video that talked about how the Monte Carlo title might have snapped Tsitsipas out of his funk. That certainly seems to be the case as far as that winning feeling being back. Steph is really back, competing really well again. He's just clawed out of some matches that he kind of had no business winning or was being outplayed. But at the end of the day, the top level has not been there for Tsitsipas the same way it clearly was the last 2 years, and that's going to be a problem as far as how he's going to be able to compete with the big dogs. You saw it today in the final. Djokovic was goading for one set, pretty much blew Tsitsipas off the court, and throughout the match I got the feeling of the issue that I've felt with Tsitsipas watching him throughout this clay court season, and it's just that he has not been able to hit off the ground as well as he has in the past on this surface. It felt like every time that Djokovic was getting the serve back, even in the second set when Tsitsipas was pretty unbothered on serve until that 5-3 game, he really was not able to hit through Novak, and obviously that's a problem that a lot of people will have with Novak Djokovic on any surface. But it kind of just seemed like if Steph wasn't botting on serve and getting free points on serve, he pretty much had no chance. And Djokovic played a tight tiebreak, and still Tsitsipas was not able to pounce on any of the short balls that he got. And, I do commend Steph for being able to defend most of his points from last year, if not even turn it into a positive. I'm not totally sure off the top of my head, but this level is not comparable to what it was the last 2 years, and he's not going to really be able to truly challenge any of the people I think I put above him if they're playing remotely well. In the case of Nadal, it's going to be an uphill battle for Steph unless he's able to rediscover his best stuff again at Roland Garros, and he can take a lot of confidence out of all the matches that he has won, but I have not seen it yet. Beyond that, no one really stood out to me during clay court season. I don't believe Zverev is going to be doing anything this year, even if he's able to get one of those cakewalk draws that he seems to get damn near every tournament he plays in. He may go far, but unlike last year, I don't think Zverev has the game right now in place to really challenge. And beyond that, I just think it's a lot of guys on the outside looking in. Anyways, that was my best attempt to cover my bases on what I've missed over the last almost month since Monte Carlo. It's pretty much the rundown on thoughts that I have. I'm planning on making that Alcaraz Madrid video because it's definitely a tournament run that deserves to be looked up on its own. In addition to that, I am thinking of getting my second rankings list of the 2010s for French Open champions out prior to or, early during Roland Garros, so stay tuned for that. That aside, that'll do it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, it would be much appreciated if you could like, comment, sub if you're not already. Help this video and the channel perform better in YouTube's algorithm. Obviously, I haven't uploaded in a minute, so anything would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching again, and of course, I will see y'all in the next one.